I can tell you that she won't do anything political. She couldn't stand for it. She was screaming. She was in a terrible state.
Meghan is planning to leave Prince Harry to marry a billionaire.
So, something unexpected appears to be stirring around Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. A new claim has reportedly raised questions about a billionaire who Meghan may have considered as a possible replacement for Harry. While the story remains shrouded in speculation, the idea alone has sparked intense curiosity about what could be happening behind the scenes. But who is this billionaire, and why would Meghan allegedly choose him to take Harry's place? And what exactly has royal commentator Angela Levin claimed to have uncovered? So, what do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal stories, please subscribe. Meghan's alleged billionaire. So, let's begin from where the whole story started. Meghan, according to Angela Levin, may have someone else in her life, and not just anyone. The man was described as an older, extremely wealthy billionaire. The claim was that Harry could no longer offer Meghan what she wanted, and that, in this version of the story, she believed he had already served his purpose. Then, just after midnight, the story suddenly exploded. About 4 minutes after midnight, Angela Levin appeared in a live online interview, holding what she described as a confidential briefing prepared for a private group of investors in California. But interestingly, she did not start by mentioning Meghan. Instead, she talked about a British-born billionaire who had supposedly spent more than a year quietly moving through the same charity, media, and technology circles connected to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And this is where things became much more interesting. According to Angela's claim, the man was not simply another wealthy businessman who had been invited to a fancy dinner. He had allegedly offered Meghan something Harry could no longer provide. That included a level of financial freedom so great that royal titles would no longer matter. He could also offer access to a global media platform that was independent of palace influence, along with connections to political, charity, and entertainment circles far beyond Britain. Angela allegedly suggested that Meghan had started looking at this man as more than just a possible business partner. In this fictional account, she was supposedly beginning to see him as someone who could become the main figure in her future public life. However, there was an important detail. Angela did not claim that a confirmed affair had taken place. Instead, she described what she called a private alliance, one that could have emotional and strategic consequences for Meghan and Harry's marriage. But within minutes, that careful wording was turned into something much more dramatic. The headlines became simple. Meghan had chosen a billionaire to replace Harry, and that brings us to the man at the center of this fictional story, Julian Cross. Julian Cross was described as a 48-year-old technology investor whose company developed secure communication systems for governments, major foundations, and international businesses. He was supposedly wealthy enough to stay away from the usual celebrity spotlight, yet powerful enough to attract attention whenever he walked into a room. Cross was said to have grown up outside London before studying engineering. He allegedly made his first fortune by developing encrypted technology used by banks during major financial crises. From there, his business interests reportedly grew. He moved into media technology, artificial intelligence, education platforms, and private charity work. Unlike some billionaires who enjoy putting their names on huge buildings and making sure everyone knows what they own, Cross supposedly preferred to stay in the background. He funded organizations. He connected powerful people. He helped solve complicated technical problems. And most importantly, he rarely appeared in promotional campaigns. In other words, he was portrayed as the kind of billionaire who did not need to be famous because his influence already spoke for itself. His wealth was estimated to be in the billions, although the true details of his investments were supposedly kept private. How did Meghan really meet the billionaire? Was their growing relationship really just business? Or was something more happening behind the scenes? Let's find out. The private meeting. So, Meghan first met Julian Cross at a private conference in San Francisco. The event brought together technology, executives, media producers, campaigners, and foundation directors. The main topic was online harassment and how false stories could spread quickly across the internet. Harry attended the opening session, but he left early for a veterans event. Meghan, on the other hand, stayed for a smaller dinner. And that's where things started to get interesting. During the dinner, Cross challenged several speakers who treated misinformation as nothing more than a technology problem. He argued that powerful people often complained about false stories while also using selective truths to control how the public viewed them. According to Cross, people could not build trust simply by correcting every false story that appeared online. Instead, he believed real credibility had to come from open and honest systems that made manipulation harder from the start. However, Meghan did not completely agree with him. She pointed out that public figures, especially women and people from less powerful backgrounds, could not always wait for perfect systems to be created. When lies were already spreading and hurting their families, they had to defend themselves immediately. Cross understood her point, but he still disagreed with part of it. He said defending yourself was necessary, but constantly building your public identity around being attacked or misunderstood could become a problem. Eventually, you might become dependent on the very conflict you were trying to escape. At that point, the conversation became much more personal than either of them had expected. Even though the discussion was tense, it was also intelligent and thoughtful. Neither person completely changed their mind, but clearly, the conversation had made an impression. Later that evening, Cross sent Meghan a report from one of his foundations. It focused on protecting ordinary people who suddenly became involved in public controversies.
That there have been meetings with billionaires, look, I'm needing professional investment or all of that type of thing.
Meghan thanked him and then made a simple request. She asked if his team could review some security problems connected to one of her upcoming digital projects. And that small request turned out to be the beginning of regular contact between them. At first, Harry knew about every conversation. Cross's company was considering helping build a platform where charities could share their stories without giving up control of users' personal information. Meghan saw the project as a way to bring women's groups, mental health organizations, and smaller foundations together, without depending on traditional media companies. Harry liked the idea too. Still, he had some concerns. He worried that the project would require more time, money, and technical support than their household could realistically handle. That's when Cross stepped in with an offer. He offered investment, technology, and a team that could operate internationally. But there was an important detail. He was not asking for a royal endorsement. Instead, he wanted a minority stake in the project and clear rules about how it would be managed. For Meghan, that felt different. For once, she felt like someone was not simply looking at her connection to the royal family and asking how it could help a business. Instead, Cross seemed more interested in whether the actual idea could work, and naturally, that made the proposal more appealing to her. Then, about 9 months later, another moment brought the whole situation into the spotlight. Angela Levin's fictional story began with a photograph taken at another private conference. In the picture, Meghan and Julian were standing on a hotel terrace overlooking the Pacific. They were several meters away from the main group. Meghan looked serious, while Julian leaned against a railing and listened to her. There was no physical intimacy in the photograph. Still, one guest who later shared it with a journalist described their conversation as extremely private. At first, the picture might not have meant much, but then another detail came into the picture. Harry had recently missed several public events where Meghan appeared. Around the same time, he had traveled alone to Britain while tensions with Charles were reportedly rising again. Before long, people online began putting all these details together. Meghan was spending time with a billionaire. Harry was traveling alone. The Sussexes were appearing together less often, and Cross's company had registered a new charitable media organization in California. Suddenly, people were turning several unrelated details into one big story. But here's the important part. Every detail was real within this fictional story, but none of them actually proved that Meghan planned to replace her husband. Was Meghan really building a future that no longer needed Harry? Did Julian Cross offer Meghan the independence Harry could never give her? Let's find out. Meghan's future plan. So, Angela claimed the private briefing changed everything. According to her, the document laid out a 5-year plan to build Meghan into an international humanitarian and business leader who could stand on her own without depending on her royal connection. The plan was huge. It included speaking tours, documentaries, investment programs for women, education technology, political forums, and a private yearly summit that would bring together donors, activists, celebrities, and government officials. But here is where things became interesting. Harry was mentioned only 3 times in more than 80 pages. One section described him as someone who could possibly take part in projects involving veterans and mental health. Another warned that his royal background could cause problems when a project needed to remain politically neutral. And a third suggested that future branding should not rely on Meghan and Harry appearing together. Angela saw those words as a sign that Cross was preparing Meghan for a life beyond Harry. The report never actually said there would be a divorce. Instead, it suggested something much more subtle. It described a future where Meghan's influence could keep growing, even if Harry was no longer a major part of the picture. And apparently, Harry had already seen an earlier version of the plan. However, the version he saw was different from the document Angela later displayed. In Harry's version, the project was presented as a platform supporting both his and Meghan's charitable interests. Then things changed. Cross's team reportedly updated the plan after investors raised concerns about Harry's lawsuits, his ongoing royal disputes, and the uncertainty surrounding his access to Britain. They worried these issues could create problems for the business. Meghan reportedly knew the new version focused much more heavily on her, but she said she had never approved wording that made Harry sound like a problem. Her advisors had a simple explanation. Investors wanted an honest assessment of the risks. Harry was not being removed from Meghan's life. The project simply needed to be able to survive, even if he was dealing with legal problems or difficulties with his family. But when Angela's video reached California, the situation reportedly became much more personal. Harry asked Meghan why a billionaire's private team had created a future where he barely appeared. Meghan reportedly told him it was a business plan, not a marriage proposal. Harry's response, however, hit a deeper nerve. He argued that business plans often showed what people considered essential and what they believed could be replaced. And that was when the argument reportedly became serious. Harry accused Meghan of allowing Cross to build a separate empire around her, while presenting the project at home as something they were creating together. Meghan pushed back. She said Harry had become suspicious because the plan offered something he could not control. Harry then asked whether she really believed he had tried to control her. Meghan reportedly answered that every project involving both of them eventually became tied to his history with the royal family. And once again, the past seemed impossible to escape. Interviews would somehow turn into discussions about Diana. Charity events could quickly become conversations about royal family disagreements. Investors had to think about security, lawsuits, and even how easily Harry could travel to Britain.
Now, reports that Prince Harry wants to visit Britain every few months following his reunion with King Charles.
Meghan wanted her work to be judged on her own skills and ideas, rather than on whether Harry's relationship with his family was going well. Harry, however, believed that being independent did not mean leaving him out of their future. Meghan reportedly saw it differently. She felt that being partners should not mean every one of her ambitions had to wait until Harry's complicated past became peaceful. And this is where the billionaire story became even more interesting. Cross seemed to have many of the things Harry had struggled to offer. He had money without royal responsibilities. He had influence without having to take part in royal ceremonies. He had security without constantly being surrounded by obvious guards. And he had powerful international connections without needing approval from the royal family. He could walk into corporate boardrooms, political events, and private charity networks without worrying about what Buckingham Palace might think. Why did Cross refuse to deny the rumors about his relationship with Meghan? What really happened during Meghan's private visit to Cross's California estate? Let's take a closer look. Hidden details behind Meghan and Cross. Now, public records showed that Julian Cross had been divorced for years, but he still had a friendly relationship with his former wife. He also had 2 grown children studying in Europe, although he rarely allowed their names to appear in the media. And that was really the interesting part. There was no obvious scandal surrounding his private life. He kept things extremely quiet. There were no constant photos of him with a new partner or anything else that could easily challenge the rumors. According to Angela, though, the lack of evidence did not mean there was a romance.
To marry a billionaire and eventually fulfill her goal of becoming the governor of California.
Instead, she said it showed just how carefully Cross protected his private life. Then another claim surfaced. Angela said a source had seen Meghan arrive at Cross's private estate in Northern California without Harry. The visit did happen, but there was an important detail that got lost in the headlines. Meghan was not there alone with Cross. 8 people were reportedly attending a planning retreat. Meghan stayed for only 1 afternoon before returning home that same evening. But once the story reached social media, things changed quickly. Cross initially refused to comment. His lawyers explained that he did not discuss private clients or philanthropic partners. From his point of view, staying silent protected his company and kept private matters private. However, that silence only made the rumors grow louder. Harry reportedly asked Meghan to get Cross to deny the story directly.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's opposing news strategies are under the spotlight.
Meghan contacted him, but Cross questioned why he should get involved in what he saw as a royal marriage dispute created by commentators. Meghan told him that his silence was making the accusations look believable. Cross, however, had a different concern. He believed that making a public denial could permanently turn him into a character in the Sussex story. After that, every meeting could be treated as evidence. Every business decision could be picked apart and given a romantic meaning, and Cross wanted no part of that. He reportedly told Meghan that he had no intention of letting a media personality decide what he needed to explain publicly. Meghan understood his argument, but she still felt hurt. The very thing she admired about Cross, his discipline and ability to stay away from drama, was now making her feel like she was facing the consequences by herself. Harry noticed that imbalance almost immediately. Cross had the money, the privacy, and the freedom to step away from the spotlight whenever he wanted. Meghan and Harry did not have that luxury. Their children, staff, friends, and business projects could all become part of the story. Harry reportedly saw Cross's refusal as proof that the relationship between them was never equal. Cross had the wealth and the infrastructure. He could simply disappear from the conversation. Meghan, on the other hand, had to deal with the public attention. Still, Meghan defended Cross. She argued that he had never asked to become part of the gossip in the first place. Harry's response was reportedly simple. Anyone building a major business platform around a married public figure should expect people to ask questions. In other words, Cross might have believed royal history had nothing to do with him, but that did not mean the public would see it that way. Meghan then asked whether every person who worked with her was supposed to take responsibility for Harry's reputation. Harry said no, but According to the account, he believed they did need to take responsibility for the structures and relationships they were creating.
And look into what's really going on with Prince Harry's biographer, our royal mastermind Angela Levin.
Then, just when the story seemed to be settling down, Angela released even more details. She claimed Cross had offered Meghan a private office in London, access to aircraft, a residence near Geneva, and money to help build a global foundation carrying Meghan's name. On the surface, those claims sounded huge, but there was another side to the story. According to the details, each claim appeared to come from something real, but the meaning had been changed or exaggerated. The London office, for example, belonged to Cross's company and was available to project leaders visiting Britain. The aircraft access was reportedly part of a corporate travel agreement, and the Geneva residence was actually a conference property used by foundation staff. Even the proposed organization was not supposed to carry Meghan's personal name. Early branding had simply presented her as the founding chair. So, taken individually, none of these things looked like secret romantic gifts. But put everything together, and the picture suddenly looked very different. It created a story that was easy for people to believe. A billionaire quietly preparing an entirely new life for Meghan. And that was exactly where the rumors became much harder to separate from reality. Did Harry finally admit the one fear he had been trying to hide? Why did King Charles ask Harry if he felt replaced? Let's take a closer look. The monarchy's intervention. So, Camilla saw the headlines before Charles did. She quickly warned his staff that the story could become dangerous. She knew how easily business deals, close friendships, and rumors of romance could all get mixed together into one big public story. And there was another reason she was worried. During her early relationship with Charles, people had heard so many denials that eventually those denials stopped meaning much. The relationship turned out to be real, and that history taught the public to see royal denials as something that might only last for a short time. Harry was now facing a similar problem. Even if Meghan and Cross had absolutely no romantic relationship, people could still assume that their silence meant they were hiding something. So, Charles asked whether the palace should step in. Camilla advised him not to make any public statement. Instead, she suggested that the king speak to Harry privately. After all, this was about his son's marriage, not an official royal matter. Still, Charles hesitated. He knew that even a simple attempt to help could easily be seen as the palace interfering in Harry's personal life. Meanwhile, William had also heard about Cross through a briefing connected to the billionaire's technology businesses. One of Julian's companies was trying to win government contracts in Europe and had links with groups working in data security. Because of that, William's advisors were concerned. They worried that a platform publicly connected to Meghan could become politically sensitive if Cross was also doing business with governments. But Catherine was looking at the situation from a completely different angle. She was less concerned about politics and more concerned about the marriage itself. She believed Meghan's denial could be completely honest, while Harry's fears could still be real. If Cross became the person giving Meghan financial support, business advice, powerful connections, and confidence, Harry could begin to feel that his own role was getting smaller, even if their marriage continued. William pointed out that Harry had chosen a life where business projects and personal identity were closely connected. Catherine, however, had a different way of looking at it. Then, 3 days later, Charles finally called Harry. At first, he did not bring up Angela's claims. Instead, he simply asked how his son was doing. Harry gave a bitter laugh. He suggested that maybe the palace was enjoying watching the Sussexes deal with the same kind of public speculation they had once accused Britain of creating. Charles quickly denied that he was taking any pleasure in it. Then Harry asked the question that was really bothering him. Did Charles believe Meghan was involved with Cross? The king gave him a direct answer. He said he had no evidence of that. Harry appreciated the honesty. But then Charles asked an even harder question. Did Harry feel replaced? Harry admitted that he did. Maybe not by another man, he explained, but by a whole system. cross could help fund Meghan's ambitions without Harry having to make the same sacrifices. For years, much of Harry's value in their public partnership had been tied to the royal story he carried, the access his name provided, and the attention that came with being connected to him. But Meghan seemed increasingly determined to move away from that story. So, what do you think about Angela Levin's shocking revelation about Meghan? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.